Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about gay men and mismatched libidos, navigating difference. Several times recently, in my work in sex therapy for gay men, clients have asked me about what to do if they want more or less sex than their partner. It's sometimes referred to as desire discrepancy or mismatched libidos, and it can happen in gay or straight relationships. For straight couples, the dynamics are often very different because of the male-female gender issues and their social implications, and a very frequent misandry. Misogyny is the irrational oppression or negative attitudes toward women, and misandry is the oppressive or negative attitudes toward men. That's misandry. And, misandry sometimes labels men in general as sex-crazed monsters and women as having the correct amount of sexuality. Now, I leave that discussion to other clinicians and authors, but in my practice for 30 years now as a specialist in working on gay men, with gay men, I focus on the dynamics relative to their relationships. And I'm proud to focus my expertise specifically with the gay male population. I think it's needed and validates the dignity, health, and pride of gay men's existence in these times of an all too omnipresent oppression that we see relentlessly and perhaps increasingly in the national and global political news. Gay men have to be continually vigilant to preserve and expand the basic rights we've been fighting for decades in the United States and the world. Helping a couple, or sometimes working just with one partner with this challenge of mismatched libidos or desire discrepancy, is a frequent request because this causes friction on a variety of levels and important consideration in the domains of a relationship: the emotional, the physical, the relational, and challenges to navigating the difference between the partners. And not just simply declaring yourselves incompatible and breaking up when other aspects of your relationship might be just fine. So let's look at these, each in turn: the emotional, the physical, the relational, and then navigating difference. So the first one with the emotional, despite the misandrist and reductionistic stereotype that men, gay or straight, are just sex-crazed pigs who have no meaningful internal emotional life, mismatched libidos in a relationship can create several emotional challenges. Feelings of what's wrong with me if you don't desire as much sex as your partner, or if you want more sex than your partner, are commonly reported to me in client sessions. I have to do a lot of reassurance that you're not, as gay men are often labeled, sick, bad, or wrong because of what you feel in terms of libido or type or frequency of your sexual desires. Let's start with that reassurance so that you're not torturing yourself with self-doubt either way. There is a pervasive social dynamic that seems to imply that whichever partner in a relationship wants less sex is somehow the virtuous and upstanding citizen one, and the one who wants more, sometimes labeled as constant, sex, is the one of lower character, lower class, or lower adult maturity. The pathologizing label of hypersexual or sex addict is annoyingly persistent. Despite this being a vernacular, it's not a scientific word that really has its roots in religious bigotry, wrapped up in some kind of clinical garb to lend it a veneer of legitimacy outside of a greedy televangelist or some opportunistic charlatan therapist trying to make a name and a fortune for himself or herself by tapping into the American Puritan sex negativity and shaming oppression. This is just cruel. It's left over from the pervasive social invalidation of women's sexuality. The value of marrying a virgin or just slut-shaming. It's a misogynistic notion that's been carried over to be lobbed at men, gay or straight, who might masturbate too often. However one defines that, which is highly subjective. or those who want to, just pounce on everything that moves. In gay male relationships, the dynamics of entitlement, indulgence, deprivation, scarcity, invalidation, shame, guilt, frustration can all be present. Guys who want sex less than their partner can be labeled as just not attracted to their partner, or less masculine, or less of a man, which are issues and labels that gay men face almost constantly. Guys who want more sex than their partner can be labeled as exploitive, or asking for something excessive or improper. When gay couples try to navigate through all this, there can be a certain undercurrent of who is right and who is wrong, and they will each get validation for their own point of view depending on who's being asked. Guys who do this, who ask their friends or even trusted family members, they're probably going to get a validation of, oh, he's just being uptight, he needs to put out, or, oh, he's just being ridiculous, nobody needs that much sex, it's not that important. So what's antidotal to these negative dynamics, other than perhaps a wide variety of topics that guys might address in couples therapy, is for a lot of validation to go on. You just agree that no one is right or wrong in this dilemma, but they are just acknowledging a difference in their emotional, physical, social, and interrelational dynamics. And this is where my previous assertions that the foundational building blocks of a healthy, happy, and enduring relationship are commitment, communication, and compromise. There's a previous episode on those three and what they mean. The process of what mismatched libidos means on the emotional level is that sex within a relationship with each other and possibly outside partners in consensual non-monogamy addresses the emotional needs of each partner for lots of good things: connection, reassurance, validation, sharing, celebration, satisfaction, relaxation, entertainment, amusement, intimacy, safety and security, and appreciation, among other feelings. No discussion of how to navigate the problem of mismatched libidos is complete without each partner involved, in a dyad of two or in a polycule of three or more, expressing and listening to the emotional implications and the needs of each partner involved. Guys who want sex less can feel like they are deficient in fulfilling their masculine duty, and guys who want sex more can feel like they're doing it wrong, or if they have a natural drive to be more sexual relative to their partner, even to other guys they just hear about, or some kind of amateur average rate of activity. There's a lot of self-reflection of, am I normal? And if I'm not, then what's wrong with me? Rather than a more radical self-acceptance of it is what it is. A good part of this discussion, sometimes guided by a couples therapist, can be, what does sex mean for you, for each of you? And talking about these domains of the emotional meaning, even if relatively little. The physical satisfaction and expression, the implications for the quality of the relationship, how are you guys getting along, how is the relationship going, and the social and community aspects, and perhaps that's the least of these. So number two, of course, is the physical. Mismatched libidos is usually just a physiological difference. Think of another physical variable such as height. You might have been born and destined by your genetics to grow up to be 5'6". Your partner might be 6'2", and the oft-quoted national average for American men is 5'9". So being short or being tall can have its parallel in relatively higher versus lower levels of libido and sexual desire. In sex therapist training, some of the material discusses how it can be considered normal for a man to masturbate 4 times a day or once every 2 weeks. Both of these guys would be considered normal under a big bell curve of the range of frequency of masturbation desire or behavior. It can help men to feel reassured and validated, to understand that, especially when they start to feel freakish and how they think they compare to others, as if being average were a pressing goal, which it's not. Variables such as medication side effects, especially with antidepressant SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor medications like Prozac or Zoloft or some of the others, they might subdue your libido. Not for everybody, but for some, they might have that side effect. Or you might have a diminished libido side effect from medications for epilepsy or hypertension, high blood pressure, or some other conditions. So levels of stress, even, your work stress, having a demanding job, or some kind of stressful environmental stuff like living in a high crime neighborhood, or having some kind of stressful event like at your job, or going through a lawsuit, or facing some kind of important medical test. How much sleep a guy gets is a huge component. Elements of your diet, religious or cultural influences from your family of origin, whether you've experienced a trauma, a sexual assault, or another kind of trauma, whether or not you already have depression or anxiety, or a social anxiety, or issues with your body image, whether or not you have physical pain, such as from an injury, such as having chronic back pain or some other kind of chronic pain, or even issues with your self-esteem. All of these might influence how relaxed and horny you can be. The problem in our society is that a very naturally low libido has some kind of social implication that he's less of a man, and a naturally high libido has implications that he's a slave to his own cock or his ass or whatever. And this results in a certain damned if you do and damned if you don't dynamic. Trying to get it all like Goldilocks, just right. In relationships, partners would do well to self-reflect on what their own body tells them to do, and to discuss this natural set point of your libido with your partner, and then to mutually validate each other's natural set points in the context of not who's right or wrong, but just that it is. The partners work hard to take any kind of social or cultural value judgment out of it and declare that wherever you are in your natural level of libido, that's okay. It's not a contest or a competition, and there are no winners or losers. This might take a certain very aware, proactive, and conscious rejection of society's messages. But gay men, just in the process of coming out alone, have to shrug off negative social pressures and societal expectations, in what we call minority stress. This is just more of the same. What society says ain't necessarily so. Negative social prejudices are not reliable or legitimate foundations to base our values and behaviors on. Instead, accepting yourself at whatever natural libido level you have, and then extending that radical acceptance to your partner, that goes a long way to a peaceful coexistence in your relationship. So let's look at the relational. Once you and your partner become aware that you might be facing the challenge of mismatched libidos in your relationship, the inevitable question of, okay, great, now what do we do, comes up. And sure, some couples just break up over this. It feels like an insurmountable, chronically annoying incompatibility, and I'm sure at least some gay couples call it quits and just hope for a better libido alignment the next time around with the next guy. But I think this is a little bit tragic, because I don't think even strongly different libidos is an insurmountable challenge in gay male relationships. And like I said earlier about commitment, communication, and compromise, practical and satisfying solutions can be arrived at if perhaps with some sincere good faith effort and progressive open-mindedness that leads to creative, if perhaps unexpected, solutions. What works for you and your partner as a solution to mismatched libidos might not work for any other gay male couple, and that's okay. The two of you create a unique entity. And while you might benefit from a model example of another couple relationship you always have to adapt the situation for your unique chemistry. The transferability of solutions to problems in gay-male relationships, you can sometimes borrow a page out of their book, but you always have to adjust it a little bit to match who you and your partner are. Because the other guys have different variables that they've had to take into consideration. Mismatched libidos can certainly be, a contributing factor to the decision to be consensually non-monogamous or an open relationship. I had a year-long specialized training to be certificated from the Sexual Health Alliance, a great sexual health training organization, in consensual non-monogamy and polyamorous relationships and families, which covered a lot of topics on how to help people with this. So in my long experience, 30 years in 2022, providing therapy for gay male couples, navigating the consensual non-monogamy or CNM agreement that I've talked about in other episodes, and troubleshooting the pitfalls of an open relationship. That's also a blog article on gaytherapyla.com/blog. Just search on the word pitfalls, and you'll find common pitfalls that I see in gay male open relationships, and then maybe more importantly, suggest some things about how to deal with them. But that's been a frequent function of therapy and then also relationship coaching that I do, which is a somewhat related but very separate professional service. Agreeing to perhaps incorporating the role of sex with outside partners in a way that works for that couple can be a frequent and welcome solution to mismatched libidos, where one partner wants to be relieved of the implied pressure to have sex more than he really wants, and the other partner doesn't need to feel constrained or frustrated in his desire to have more. This is especially relevant when the primary partners enjoy a good, sound relationship overall, such as emotionally and domestically, and they want to be together in a committed, long-term, health-permitting relationship. The role of the sex they have with each other, from not at all to sometimes to frequently, or the type of sex, such as vanilla versus kink, is a separate discussion from the role and function and purpose of the sex they might have with outside partners. And of course, the consensual in consensual non-monogamy means a fairly thorough and frequent discussion of mutually accepted ground rules for what sex with outside partners might need to look like. In couples who both want to elect monogamy, in contrast, coping with mismatched libidos might involve a discussion of the very practical use of masturbation and porn in the relationship. It might also involve a compromise discussion where sometimes the partner who is not as often in the mood might just be a good sport and help his partner get off in some way. But the higher libido partner might also find ways to get himself off through porn or toys or devices or fantasy so that he doesn't have to be perceived as always pestering his partner. And this kind of balance should be discussed so that resentments don't arise from one partner always gets his way and the other one just has to deal with it. A good discussion can be, does what we do to handle this feel fair and balanced? And having that very frank discussion. If not, then we talk about what changes could we make in practical behavioral terms that might make it feel more balanced. So much of the relational component in coping with mismatched libidos is trying very hard not to be defensive or accusatory or abandoned or resentful or entitled or blaming or shaming for wherever one falls on the libido spectrum, however low, however high. Coming into it with an attitude of compassion and patience and open-mindedness and honest expression of your feelings and sincere active listening to your partner's feelings, mutual validation, a certain amount of creativity in creative solutions where you might say, hey, how about if we try this, fill in the blank. And just plain calm, removing the screaming and crying and drama of it all, are the foundational building blocks of arriving at what social workers like me call an adaptive coping for the situation, an adaptive coping for the natural differences in how libido manifests itself in your sexual health and your subjective experience of your sexuality. It helps to remember that you're navigating all of this with someone whom you supposedly love and cherish on a very profound level. This is not a union negotiation. This is not a boss. This is not a customer sales deal that you're talking about. This is not the opposing counsel in a legal battle. You're doing this and having these discussions and arriving at compromises in the context that this is a loving, intimate relationship with hopefully two people that are profoundly committed to each other. So let's look at the last part, navigating difference. The process of the couple or the polycule finding its way toward peace of mind in all of this is like navigating a big ship through narrow channels of rocky waters. So much of couples therapy for gay men is about navigating difference or taking different points of view on many topics. Sure, sex, but there are also other differences such as handling your finances, managing the operations of a home together, dealing with your respective in-laws, your approach to alcohol or drugs, supporting each other's careers, dealing with health challenges, and so many other topics that I write about or do the podcast episodes about. And you can see all the previous episodes and all the blog articles on gaytherapyla.com/blog. I'm going to keep plugging that. And, use the search box on the gaytherapyla.com blog page, because the little search box, you can type in the topics or the keywords that you want to know more about, and it will probably bring up, there's hundreds of them, it'll probably bring up some relevant articles you might enjoy reading. So having a difference, including a big one, in your natural libido level, or even in your tastes or your preferences in sex beyond frequency, and into variables like vanilla versus kink, the role or function of sexual expression, whether it's about intimacy or just entertainment, is so common in gay male relationships that it's probably a good idea to just anticipate the need for that discussion, either at first, when you're first together, or certainly eventually, many years into being together. Accepting difference is a key to important contemporary ideas like diversity and representation in the workplace, or in politics, or in entertainment. Current social discourse is frequently about the importance of recognizing and appreciating difference and diversity in society of all kinds: races, religion, nationality, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, of course, parental status, ideology, social class, disability status, parental status. Issues of this arrogant "be my way or I'll punish you" attitudes, often seen in religious and social conservatives like the current Republican movement, are appropriately seen as hostile and undermining and antisocial to the values of a pluralistic society. Tolerance, acceptance, validation, coexistence, and appreciation of diversity are currently seen as virtuous social values. The same can be said on a micro level of the gay-male relationship in each household. Can we appreciate our differences rather than using those as a source for fights and friction and unhappiness? I often characterize my work as a gay men specialist sex therapist as helping guys improve your quality of life by way of improving the quality of your sex life. And while sex therapy for gay men is not all that I do, I'm also a mainstream therapist who is a specialist in working exclusively with gay men, but on a variety of challenges, such as, depression, anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, attention deficit disorder, bipolar disorder, trauma recovery, health challenges, all of that. The sex therapy component is often the most urgent request for my services in my private practice, because there are just very few nationally ASECT certified. ASECT is the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. That is the kind of governing body of certified sex therapists in the United States. And there's even fewer by, I think, a shocking degree of gay male specialist ones, leaving many guys nearly desperate to find gay affirmative, gay specific, informed, skilled, and validating help. And while I'm licensed to provide psychotherapy in California, I also provide executive coaching and life, career, relationship coaching to gay men in all the United States and really worldwide. And I'm very happy to do this work. Somebody's got to do it. I'm happy to fill that role because I think guys need it and hopefully appreciate it and get benefit out of it, I hope. So for more information on how to deal with mismatched libidos in your relationship or any of the things that might affect your quality of life, let me know. You can call or text in the United States 310-339-5778. So that's 310-339-5778. Or email me at ken@gaytherapyla.com. And gaytherapyla.com is my website that outlines all the services I offer and, of course, has that archive library of past blog articles. Self-empowerment to take control of your life starts with the simple idea that it's possible to do so, and that you owe that to yourself to do the best you can with what you have. And you take it so far yourself, but then when you've taken it as far as you can go by yourself, well, then that's when you ask for help from somebody in a position to, have the skills or the experience to help you. So, thanks, and I'll see you next time.